And welcome everybody to part 2 of my interview with CrossFit athlete and writer Karisa Stapp. If you didn't get a chance to check out part 1, go back and listen to that first, and that will give you some context to our conversation in part 2 here. I am excited to share this a little bit shorter than the last episode, but we delve into Karisa's writing career, her work on her new book, and some other topics of interest. Thanks again very much for following, and thank you again to Karisa for spending some time with Unleash the Cragle. Check it out, everybody. Give us a follow, give us a like, share it with your friends, subscribe. Links will be in the show notes. Without further ado, here's Karisa. So we talked CrossFit, so now let's shift a little bit because CrossFit's not the only thing. You and I have talked about this a bit. You started your writing career when? How old? I mean, you started writing, let's put it that way.
Writing.
How long ago? When did you,
I've been like writing stuff for like my whole life, pretty
like
much.
short stories?
Yeah, just like I've had a goal of writing a novel since I was like a kid, and so when
Mhm.
we were like little, like I have a brother and a sister, we'd have like story writing days where we would just like sit outside or sit somewhere and like work on stories that we would write. So that's always been a big thing. That's part of my life. Like I've always loved like fantasy novels in particular. Um, Especially like middle school, high school, I was always reading something like that, and
Mhm.
that's always been something I've really wanted to work on is like writing a novel one day. So yeah, that's I've always been writing something, but I'd say that because it's just like CrossFit or anything, you can kind of do something a little bit here and there, but when you actually want to do it serious, you have to put some work into it and really just like put some time aside for it. And so last year, 2023, this season, I was because I was just training pretty much full time for trying to make it to the games. And so the rest days and things like that, I was like, well, I have this extra time. I'm going to set some word counts for myself and
Mhm.
try to finish a book. And
Mhm.
so I like finished my first novel this past year, and it's one I'm not sure I'm going to try to publish or not. Just kind of like I got a lot of good experience with it, but have a lot of other ideas now, and I'm writing another book that I'm hopefully going to be done with the end of this summer and
Mhm.
hopefully publish it at some point.
Yeah, and we've talked about it. I'm an IT person by trade, but I wrote my first book, a nonfiction book, which still does really well in India and Japan, of all places. And I haven't touched anything with it. I'm actually going to republish it. The reason Chris and I got to chatting about writing is I had that dream also of writing, and finally decided to commit to it in 2015. Uh, Went to an online writing school where I've met tremendous folks who have written a lot of books, and it's one of those things where once you want to do it, you're scared of doing it.
Hmm.
You are scared of publishing your work because it'll stink. And I think I've said this to you, and I'm always reminded what Stephen King said: your first book's going to suck, your second book's going to suck, your third
Oh.
book's going to suck a little less, your fourth book might suck worse, but not sure. It's one of those things where it's not going to be necessarily great in your eyes, but it still needs to get published. So, listeners, I'm going to try to force her in a nice way to publish her work, the first one, just because it's probably just fine and good. So the process of writing, is it calming for you, or is it, do you find it after training hard?
Hmm.
Do you find it relaxing to sit down and write,
Um,
or is it similar to like training where you need to do it, you're going to just put your head down and take care of the whatever word count you need to, or does it change day to
I
day?
I think it definitely changes. It's definitely like I feel like it's just like training. Like there'll be some days where I'm like, just write, and then things just start coming, and maybe it's a scene that I've been really looking forward to writing, so
Mm.
I can really get into it, and it's some interactions between characters because I feel like you always have those ideas that inspire you to
Mhm.
write your story to begin with, and so um, like the book I'm writing right now, I had like some ideas and just some character interactions I was really excited to get into. So once I finally got to those, I felt like I could knock them out really smooth. But I feel like most days, it's just like training. Some days are really good, but most days are just like you gotta just go in and get the work done. So that's how it is for the writing. I like
Mm.
those definitely days where I get home. I'm like, okay, I need to write this many words. But I'm like, but I need to do some chores first. I need to do this first. I need
Yeah.
to do this
Yeah.
thing over here.
Yeah.
And then so I'm like trying to procrastinate it because it's like, you know, you have to sit there and it takes me probably at least 20 minutes to really get back into the world
Yeah.
and then start writing.
Yeah.
And then at that point, and some days it's just a struggle the whole way through and I'm just writing and being like, this is terrible, but
You got
I
to get
really,
words on page. Yeah.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
especially for the first draft, I'm like, that's what I told myself to like get a first draft this summer. And I'm planning just like to do like a complete rewrite and then have that done by Christmas time. Or
Okay.
like I use my first book kind of as like a template.
Mm.
That way I can just get stuff out. And I'm like
Yeah.
writing it. I'm like, I know this part's bad. I
But
know it's
but
bad,
but
but
but you at least got to, yeah, you got to get. And it's funny because I'm a nonfiction writer, but I'm writing a novel, and I actually had an idea that relates to CrossFit and mystery, and that's all I'm going to say because I am still now I'm at that reluctant point. I've published a couple of books. I have three more I'm getting ready to publish in nonfiction. Those are easy. Those flow. The fiction is what I really want to do, but it scares me because I feel like again I feel like a neophyte, a newbie, because it's going to be terrible. But like my friend says, it's going to be terrible. The great part is there's so many books out there. The good, bad ones get lost quickly. So yeah, I mean I think I find that that's the hard part for me with fiction is you got to immerse yourself in the world.
Mhm.
You can't just do a training guide or a how to.
Yeah.
And for me, writing nonfiction, it's just I sit down and when I want to talk about something, it's I imagine I'm talking to my kids or somebody else how to blah blah blah. But fiction is so much more different.
Oh
It's a
yeah.
different game, and so where do you get your ideas?
Um, well, I feel like that I feel like there's a lot of writers that say this. It's like, you can find ideas anywhere. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing for me. Like I'll just think of an idea and it just starts kind of spiraling and building off of that. So,
Okay, and just to clarify, without giving any secrets of books away, like the world is fantasy, like
mhm.
futuristic.
I would say it's more because I've always liked, the more medieval type
Okay,
fantasy. So it's definitely more of like that time period.
okay,
Not set in this world, like a made up world, but, but yeah, but that makes it kind of hard too because you've got to, world build for it and all that.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So medieval times, and the 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 hero is a guy, a
yes.
gal, or a combo of both.
Well, the main character, he's a guy, and then there's gonna be, I kind of have like two main characters. He's like the main character that has most of the word count, but then there's a side character that's this girl. Um, I haven't decided if like this is gonna be a love interest thing or not, or just kind of like separate, like friend type of thing. And I feel like that's another thing too. Like I'm definitely somebody that I can over plan books. So I've decided that this book is just like, I know what the end needs to be of this first book. I
Mhm.
know the stuff in the middle I want to include. And then I'm just kind of writing and seeing where it goes and how it
Where
gets
it
there.
flows,
Yeah,
where it
yeah.
flows. Yeah, makes sense. I think that's you have to know the ending. The beginning will need to make sense,
hmm
but it'll flow where it flows. And
Yeah.
you got to get to the end. And I think it's interesting because I've listened to friends of mine who write fiction books, and some right off the cuff, and somehow it works. But 99% of them go, can't do it. You have to know where you're going to end, or it'll never end.
Oh, yeah,
It'll
yeah.
feel like a George R. R. Martin Games of Thrones book.
Oh,
It
yeah.
will never end. So, so you get ideas from a variety of places. Medieval. The first book was kind of that medieval, also.
Yeah. Well, the
Yeah.
first book was kind of like a combination between worlds because I've always liked the idea of like alternate worlds and dimensions, things like that.
Okay.
I minored in philosophy in college,
Oh,
so
okay. Wow.
oh yeah, so definitely have that side of me that's like, oh, uh, like different worlds, different realities, and so that's kind of the first book is like kind of my first book I wrote. And I do want to kind of come back to unpublish it. I just know I want that one to be a series as well, and I kind of want to have a little more writing experience before I come back to that.
Come back to it.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely kind of like an in between. Like
Hmm.
main characters from this world goes to a different one, and they're interrelated. Um, that one's just a very like typical. save the world from darkness type of thing. But
We just
which I
have to
love
make
those
sure
books.
that you include some good philosophical quotes, like
Oh yeah.
what would Spock say for this character in medieval
Yes.
times or something, right?
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
very cool. Yeah, so we will definitely post links so you can follow. You definitely want to follow her Instagram, Chris's. Both her personal. I think are they both public? Is your
Yeah, yeah.
both Instagrams and so forth. So we'll get the social media links out there for both of hers to follow kind of that journey of the writing. Uh, the book you're currently working on is the same thing, medieval and so
Yeah.
forth.
Medieval type of world. Yeah, just in the case where it's like, more old weapons, things like that. It's definitely a different type of story though than the first one. Instead of like the good, you know, good versus evil, which it might turn into that by the third book. Because I have ideas for a trilogy for that one. If it can go well and
Hmm.
whatever. The first one's definitely more feel like that kind of interactions between characters and people thinking something's one thing, it's really not. Um, yeah, it's gonna be based kind of around like a circus.
Okay.
Yeah, where people like have these powers and that those powers can be used to, aid in these circus acts, things like that. And yeah, that all kind of it's all going to kind of relate to because there's like a small island, a larger island. You can't really get between the two because the seas are you can't sail across and things like that. So
Mm.
all kind of going to relate together, but kind of the idea of like this main character. He's been working in. He's like a miner. Eventually joins the circus, thinking it's going to be one thing. It's really not, and it kind of opens his eyes to like some problems on the islands that he didn't really realize were there,
Mm.
and kind of going to build off of that. But
And is he on the big island or the little island?
the little one. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And it's like the big island. There's just like this small bridge that kind of connects them both, and there's like this big country that controls the bridge. They kind of control everything that happens on the small island. And if you're
Mm.
just raised on that small island, you don't really know quite what's going on
Uh,
until you're kind of like, oh, okay, we're just kind of all just doing whatever.
yeah, we're 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 puppets in the big island's plans
Yeah,
or whatever.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay,
and
so
that's like,
so there's going to be medieval, there's going to be islands, there's going to be storms. May or may not be a love interest. There'll be a little
yeah.
philosophy or a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
philosophy.
yeah. That'll be,
Yeah, yeah. So we don't want to give too much away because
yeah,
we don't want
yeah.
to paint you into a corner, but it'd be exciting to read. And I'll admit, I grew up with brothers who were all fantasy lovers, and I felt like people who know me feel like I'm a I can't think of the word now. I lost it. Probably after that 5K row we did, but I do the opposite of what the norm is, and so I got into thrillers and mysteries because my brothers didn't like those. And so I will read your fantasy. It's not a first love of mine, but I'm learning to love it. I'm learning to love burpees and
Oh
running.
yeah.
So fantasy for me, but definitely, I mean, fantasy huge market and
Hmm.
huge opportunity out there
Oh
for you.
yeah,
So
yeah.
definitely, listeners, I will post the Instagram at the end. We'll cover all the social links and we'll put it in the show notes. But definitely, you'll want to follow the career because if any indication of her 2019 or 2018 to 2023 of CrossFit is any indication, then you'll want to follow her career while she's still unknown before she gets famous. So now let's kind of go back to you've done CrossFit. It's easy to kind of, I say easy, relative term, to focus on CrossFit training, but you're doing something different that you've never done before coming up
Yeah.
here, which is what?
Um, well, in November, I'm going to try to do a Hyroxx competition.
Okay.
So that's something I've been looking at for a bit just because the CrossFit competitions I've been good at have been, running, long events, things like that. And that's just what a Hyroxx competition is. It's like 8K of running. So 8,000 meters of running with 8 stations of, I think there's I don't quite remember the order of the stations, but I know there's a rowing station, a ski station, wall balls, sled push, sled pull, farmer carry, burpee broad jumps, and I don't know if I've said lunges already, but
Yeah.
lunge.
So you basically you what run like 1,000 meters to a station,
Yeah,
run
yeah,
1,000 meters to a
to a
station,
station. Yeah,
and so it's not like you're running just 8K and then you do this other work.
Oh no.
you have to run efficiently, but you have to have enough
Yeah.
control to be able to do the whatever
Conditioning too.
work, wall balls or whatever. I think because who's a really famous guy? He did CrossFit one year. That Hunter
Oh yeah, Hunter McIntyre.
McIntyre. Yeah,
McIntyre.
so
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
Hyroxx, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I remember he's won it numerous times, and it's like considered the sheriff. He's like the guy who's the Hyroxx kind of guy, and
Oh yeah.
I remember they had the cuts the first year, and he didn't make it past the first cuts because it was like rope climbs or whatever. But it still involves a lot of movements that you have to be good at. It's not just running. You
Oh
have to
yeah.
be good at
No.
all these other under though the duress, if you will. I call
Hmm.
it duress of very aerobic going into anaerobic movements,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And then go back to aerobic again, if you will, with the running. So that'll be fun. So
Mhm.
you're planning to do that where?
I'm planning to do the one in Dallas. I haven't
Okay.
signed up yet, but going
The
to
plan
this
is the
summer.
plan is
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a chance that some others might be involved, could
Yeah.
adjust the plan, but
Oh
for
yeah.
right
But
now, for your plan, you're planning to do Dallas in November,
yeah, I
which
think
is actually
November
probably
18th.
good weather still in Dallas. It's
Oh
not going
yeah.
to get terribly cold,
Well, I think
so it
it's all
probably.
indoor competition
Oh,
too,
okay.
so
So that's
it'll
good.
be good. Yeah. Yeah.
That'll be just good. So that'd be a fun way to kind of challenge yourself in a different way.
Yeah.
Kind of leverage some of the skill you've used and learned through CrossFit, but kind of more to your strengths. Because we did the global 5K that CrossFit did. You didn't have a chance to do it. You're nursing a little bit of an injury.
Oh yeah, a little Achilles injury that just
Uh,
gotta be careful. I can't run too many days in a row right now.
Okay.
I can get some good running in, but by the time the Hyrox is here, I should be
Okay.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll just, tough it out, whatever that looks like. So, yeah. So that's another great, any other, like, that'll be basically the end of the year then.
Mhm.
And then it's prep for probably the Open in
Yeah,
February
yeah. I have been
again.
doing some like off season that one, the fitness experience. I have
Uh,
been doing that, but I think probably not for this year. I'm probably just gonna do the Hyrox, get that running in, and then
yeah.
just kind of see where that goes. I think that's just kind of like I said. Like I like to just keep challenging myself in as many
Yeah.
ways as possible, and that's kind of I think the fun part of the whole fitness journey in general is
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
always finding
Well,
things to work
and
on.
there's so many interesting, one of the things I've looked at, of course, I have to, I have to decide if I'm going to make the financial commitment. I've thought of doing is the tactical games,
Oh yeah,
which is, some
yeah.
running, some dragging, some grunt work, using certainly a pistol and a rifle. Um, but there's certainly a financial commitment, as far as that. Something, at least it's not all aerobic. There's some grunt
Oh
work,
yeah,
which
yes.
is at my size is good. But there's so many different variety. That's the
Oh
interesting
yeah,
part. You got
yeah.
Tough
That's the
Mudders,
cool
you've
thing.
got Hyroxx, you've got, plenty of CrossFit competitions out there you can do. There's plenty of other things like
Yeah.
triathlons
Oh
and
yeah.
so forth that you
Another
can.
thing I want
I
to
mean,
do.
there's so many opportunities to stay fit, but also
Mm.
compete. Kind of
Yeah.
keep that competitive blood
Pumping.
pumping and moving. So very cool. Well, I
Oh
know we
yeah.
will have her on again. It's been I've been talking about getting you on the podcast. Um, boy, for a couple months now since I had
Hmm.
kind of the idea of doing this. It's always tough getting schedules. I've done other podcasts and doing interviews is tough getting people together, getting schedules together. So I'm glad it's able to work out. And I'm glad she actually texted me because I actually forgot we were interviewing today.
Oh
After
no.
the 5K row, I, I was mentally gone. And so I'm glad we had a chance to finally sit down to catch up, to see kind of where your journey is now. So we'll post in the show notes, but give us a couple. So your Instagram for your personal is
I think it's just Karisa Stapp.
okay,
Yeah.
and then your writing one is
Case KS writer
okay.
or
And
K
like I
Stapp writer.
said, she doesn't have to know perfectly. Just look in the show notes. Be sure to click on both. Follow her. Certainly, this personal one is going to have more CrossFit stuff. The writing stuff is going to be the writing, but it's good to
Hmm.
get get both. I know it's like when you're doing a new thing, followers are key. And if you're even if you're not a fantasy reading lover, you'll love reading her stuff. And then, are you on any other social media? Just
No.
those two, Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we have that. Certainly follow that. follow her journey in CrossFit and so forth. Great to catch up with you.
Oh yeah, it was lots of fun.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully whatever we didn't cover, if there's something you want to know about Karisa, reach out to her and ask her yourself. I definitely know we'll follow up again as maybe as we get closer to games open and so forth. We'll catch up again. But thank you again taking the time. I know you have a long grindy workout you're going to do with Carrie
Oh yeah, yeah.
after this. And so it never stops with these young athletes. They never stop. So thank you again. This is Jonathan Cragle. Be sure to follow up the next episode. We'll have a surprise. But thanks again so much, Karisa,
Thank
and for
you.
sitting down with us.
Yeah.
Take care, all. If you have a chance, be kind to someone today. And if you don't, at least don't be unkind. Take care, all.